Right, hi there, it's David at Halls of Hedden here. After an article appeared in the September issue of the RHS journal where people were invited to name their favourite dahlias, one of our customers got in touch and was interested to know what mine were. And it's a question I often get asked, and it's a one that I find very, very hard to answer, because when you're growing as many varieties of dahlias as we do, how do you pick your favourites? I have to admit to having a bit of a soft spot for the open centred ones that you're seeing in front of you now. I think they're great garden performers, so I'm going to concentrate on my favourite garden varieties, the ones that will do well for just about anybody given the right conditions. So here goes, a rundown of my top 10 and possibly a few more. So this is my first one. Not an open centred variety, but one of the varieties I remember from way back when I was a wee young lad. Variety called Doris Day, that was bred in the late 1940s, introduced I think commercially in 1952, and has been in our catalogue ever since. It's a lovely, very free flowering cardinal red cactus with lovely wiry stems. And it just flowers and flowers. It would be, if we allowed it, it would be one of the earliest flowering ones on our field. And we've been cutting quite a few off here, so it looks a little bit sort of like sparse at the moment. But we'll probably cut about 200 stems off this block of 20 plants. Like all our dahlias, these are planted at 40 centimetres apart, 40 by 40, in nets that we raise up as the plants grow. They're planted out as young plants in June from cuttings taken at the end of April, early May. They're pinched out on about the second week of July. This year it was the 12th of July, and then they're flowering from about end of August onwards. So there you go, Doris Day. Next on my list will be David Howard, an excellent garden variety with these lovely purple foliage and the burnt orange flowers. Now you probably notice a difference between this and the Doris Day, in that A, we don't cut many of the blooms, and B, we don't disbud it. They're just left to flower freely as they come, so hence the amazing number of blooms that the 20 plants we have planted here are bearing. You know, so that's 20 plants planted at 40 centimetre centres, flowering at about 4 foot high, 1.2 metres, and it will just go on and on. We do try and get to do a little bit of dead heading on it, but I have to be honest, we just leave it. And as I said, we don't actually take the side buds out, we just let it flower freely. Hard to work out the next ones, but I've chosen Hadrian Sunlight, which was the first of our range of Hadrian's varieties. Occurred as a natural seedling grown on the sand benches where we'd had a variety called Twinings After 8 grown as pot tubers the year before. Lo and behold, in March, April, lots of black-leaved dahlia seedlings started germinating, and we grew them on, and this was one of them, which within a few years of its introduction was awarded an AGM by the RHS. Again, very free flowering, dark foliage, open scented, just goes on and on and on. This one grows to around about 90 centimetres to a metre. The bees love it. We don't deadhead them, we just let them go, so there's going to be masses and masses of seed heads on these, which you can see. When they're more rounded, they're a flower bud. When they're more pointed, like that one is there, that's going to be a seed head, and they're absolutely covered. And just along the road from it is a variety called Hadrian Sunset, another one which it was commented on by David Brown, a lovely old gentleman who started the National Dahlia Collection many years ago, and he's been all over the world photographing dahlias, that this was one of the darkest foliaged one he'd ever seen. Beautiful thing for just general garden display. Like burnt orange, single, and as you can see, the bees enjoy this one as well, with it being open scented. And again, we don't deadhead this one. Which one am I choosing now? It's got to be another one of ours, and I might be a bit biased, but I'm thinking of them from the point of view of garden varieties. So let's just go down the row a bit, and as I'm passing I'll mention one or two more that I like, but I wouldn't put them necessarily in my top 10. But that's not to say they don't deserve planting. Honker, which has been out since 1990, a star dahlia. A much more recent introduction from us, which is Hadrian's Bubble Gum. Just over the back there is one of the it's Art Nouveau. As we're passing it, I'm going to mention this one because this is up there as my favourite. It's a variety called May and Pearl, bred by the late Ken Stock, which we introduced in 2005. A double orchid dahlia. It grows to around about 80 to 90 centimetres and just has this lovely natural appearance for maybe the front of the border. I know they're shorter dahlias, but this one, it works for me. We've actually been cutting this year, so it does work as a cut flower, because normally we'd see a whole carpet of just pink flowers if we were to leave it. And then that leads me on to Hadrian's Midnight, which is a magnet for butterflies and bees. Lovely dark centre to the flowers, a lovely twist to the petals, so it's not quite a star, it's just a single variety, dark stems. It's just green foliage, but it has, you know, darker veining running through it, and just so free flowering. I wouldn't like to guess how many flowers are on those 20 plants, but that's been going on for about flowering like that for 4 weeks now. I'm going to break the mould a little bit with this one now. This is a variety called Black Monarch that was introduced in 1946. Again, it's one of those varieties that I remember from a long time ago. Just a stunning deep crimson with, you know, even darker shading on it. Despite its age, the plants are still looking strong and healthy. And work well actually cutting these as just the buds and letting them open in water. So I've been cutting some at that size and just letting them develop, and they're making a nice vase full. Just walking past some of the other bedders now. That's Preston Park, again a very old variety, but then up to Spanish Conquest, again a variety from the late Ken Stock, which is a good one for the front of the border. Introduced that one in 2008. And beyond is Yellowhammer. I prefer obviously the Hadrian Sunlight because it's ours, but Yellowhammer was actually introduced in 1966. As I said earlier, how do you choose from all of these varieties? Yeah, so just walking past some that sort of stand out for me. I love this variety, Asquith Edna, a medium deck. Lovely blends of peach, yellow and apricot. Goes right back to the stems when it's out. Grows around about 4 foot. So it's up there amongst my favourites. I'll say, where do you stop? We've got Barbary Pip here, a miniature deck. Looking as good as I've ever seen it, and it has been out for a few years now. Been cutting some lovely blooms off that one. And then this one here is Carstone Ruby, raised by the late Joe Kidd, variety we introduced in 1996, and still one of the best garden reds. Little miniature decorative, very free flowering and good stems, upright habit. Hillcrest Firecrests up there, from Les Jackson, the variety we introduced in not so long ago in 2016. We've cut a lot of this because it does make a great cut flower, but you know, less than a metre. The stems aren't particularly long, but just stunning colour, especially for this time of year. I can't go on talking about my favourite dahlias without mentioning Westerton Ella Grace from Gordon Hodgson. It's a tall grower, this one, up to nearly 6 feet. Named after our great niece, and when we introduced this we were able to hand over a cheque to Lady Elsie Robson for almost £2,000 because the royalties that Gordon would have received, he requested, went to the Bobby Robson Foundation. Now this one, when it grows well, Jasudi Andromeda is one of my favourite varieties, a little miniature cactus. Been absolutely superb for us this year. Grows to around about 5 feet, was one of the varieties that we were entrusted with by the late Peter Greenway for us to trial, and if we felt they were good enough to actually introduce, which we did actually introduce most of them. Some sadly we didn't feel were quite good enough, but we do like this one. I do like this one, and that's up there in my top 10. Jasudi Aurora, a very, very popular one. And then as we walk along the beds, thinking I'm getting up to my top 10 or so now, I've lost track. Jasudi Hercules, all grown outside, loads and loads of buds still to come on this one. It's been flowering its socks off for about 3-4 weeks now. And then just beyond is Jasudi Mercury. And I haven't even talked about the Fims yet that I really like. So that'll be the next bit. I love Jasudi Neptune. Just can be a little bit late, but again we've been cutting a lot off this, so it's hard to get the impression. But there's another section of the field. How do you choose? And that's what a lot of people have said to me today. Walking down the rows, there's a mile of dahlias here if you put all the beds end to end. A mile. Worked out roughly there's 100,000 stems of flowers on these, probably more, looking at those poms ahead. But this is a favourite of mine. Normandy frills, raised by the recently deceased John Willett. We've had this variety for a few years now, and it makes a regular appearance in the Fimbriated Championship when I put an entry in, and other people put entries in as well. Sometimes they grow a lot better than I do, but these are outside, open skies, the northeast weather, and you certainly can't complain when you get bloom like that. And this one's Normandy Wedding Day. Rycroft Helen's up there in my list of good, reliable. This is a medium semi-cactus. Grows well outside for us. Very, very little marking. Gets right back to the stem. Okay, that blooms a little bit front facing in comparison with the ideal. And you've got Canora Wow. The Fer de Soleil there, that red. And I could just go on. This is Susan Gilliat. There's Western Pirate, very free flowering miniature cactus, popular on the exhibition bench but just really free flowering to give a good garden show. And there's Sam Hopkins with Doris Day again just behind. Gateshead Festival was one of my dad's favourites, and I do like it as well. Really good top class small deck for the show bench. Probably not the best of performers in the garden because it can be a little bit weak necked and it takes a bit to grow it, but just astounding. That's an underdeveloped bloom there. Everything else has been cut for a flower order we had. But that's looking at the giants, the decks and the cactus across there. There's Main Pearl again. These plants here were actually tubers left in from last year. There's no support to them. It's developing like quite naturally, no disbud and actually no attention. They're not even tied up. And there's another one, Millie. We only introduced this a few years ago, raised by Gabby Hayes. A large deck, could be pushed to a giant, but you know, for that colour, not surviving is the wrong word, but growing outside virtually unmarked. So you can probably see with these beds that there's a bit of a theme going on. Those are all reds. Then we've got a bed that's all oranges. That's 12 different varieties of oranges. And then the same again with sort of orangey apricots through to yellows and creams. And then whites through to pinks. These are all extras that were planted in to get some extra cut flower. And then pinks there again. And again, I'm coming back to Western Ella Grace. I thought I might find a bloom that's a bit more developed, but we've been cutting them off there. So, there you go. A bit of a list of my favourite ones for sort of garden use. And I say I could go on and on and on. Best option is for you to come and have a look yourselves. Fields are open up until the first frost, which might be in a couple of weeks' time. It might be next week, it might be into November, but certainly they're going to be looking at the best over the next 2 weeks. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that. Take care, thank you, and good night.